Welcome to the Popcorn Talk Network, for the online broadcast network that features movie discussion, news, and interviews. Press 1. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies. From the Popcorn Talk Network, the online broadcast network for movie talk, Alicia Malone with Scott, Movie Mantz, and the Schmoes Know. This is Profiles, in-depth spotlights on the greatest filmmakers and artists in motion picture history.
Hello, Profilers!
And I gotta
We're so glad to be back.
so
It's
great
our
to be
46th
back. I mean, it's
episode
been
for Robert
like
Altman,
5
and
or
he
6
is
weeks
such
since
a
we've
great
done
filmmaker. Wait,
an episode of...
This doesn't work.
Oh, that only works in a Robert Altman movie.
Yes, not for a podcast.
Right. No, not for this podcast. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it took long enough, but we are finally, after 46 shows, getting around to profiling not only one of the greatest American filmmakers of all time, but also the best and greatest independent filmmaker of all time, Robert Altman.
Damn right. The thing that I love about Robert Altman is that he is a true indie director in every way. Even when he worked in the studio system, he had that great independent spirit. Nobody did what he did. He broke all the rules, like the overlapping dialogue, like the use of camera, like the intersecting storylines and the millions of characters on screen, and the kind of subjects that he tackled, often mixing up genres at the same time.
He mixed up genres. He had an innovative use of sound as well, which he did like really from his first breakthrough movie, MASH, like right away.
Yeah.
You got the overlapping dialogue, but they didn't call Robert Altman a maverick for nothing. He really did he shunned the Hollywood system. He made movies his own way, and he did 39 films as a director between 1957, his first movie, and his final film, A Prairie Home Companion, in 2006. And he was so effective at creating this genre. I mean, we'll get to this later in the show, but there are so many movies that would not exist had it not been for these Altman-esque films.
Oh, for sure. And actors loved working with him. He often worked with the same actors you see, or the same players, you should say, like seeing Lily Tomlin and Elliott Gould and Tim Robbins.
Michael Murphy. He
really allowed them freedom to improvise and do what they did best. And it's amazing to me. I think it's inspiring that he didn't hit his breakthrough movie till he's in his 40s.
Right, exactly.
There's hope for me yet.
I mean, he was, well, I guess I'm a little past my prime here then. But yeah, he really cut his teeth doing a lot of episodic TV, and he got bored with that, and then he started making movies his own way. He got into arguments with the studios because they didn't get him because he was always ahead of his time. This is going to be a really great profile to do on Robert Altman. And
wonderful life,
wonderful career. What an amazing career. I mean, my God, Robert Altman. I've always wanted to profile Robert Altman, but before we get to the show, let's see his wonderful life right now.
Roll it.
Robert Bernard Altman was born on February 20th, 1925 in Kansas City, Missouri. His mother, Helen, was a descendant of the Mayflower, and his father, Bernard, was a wealthy insurance salesman. In 1943, Altman joined the U.S. Air Force and flew more than 50 bombing missions during World War II. Upon his discharge, he moved to Hollywood, where he tried his hand at screenwriting and songwriting. He even tried acting, appearing in 1947's The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. Throughout the 50s and 60s, he directed more than 65 short films and documentaries for the Calvin Company and worked frequently in television, directing classic episodes of Alfred Hitchcock Presents, Bonanza, Peter Gunn, and Route 66, to name a few. Altman made his big screen directorial debut in 1957 with the teen exploitation film The Delinquents, but his breakthrough didn't come until 1970 with his adaptation of the anti-war satire MASH. Over the next 4 decades, Altman solidified his reputation as a maverick filmmaker, thanks to classics like McCabe and Mrs. Miller, The Long Goodbye, Nashville, The Player, Shortcuts, Gosford Park, and his final film, A Prairie Home Companion. Robert Altman was nominated for 7 Academy Awards, 5 of them for Best Director, and in 2006 he was awarded an honorary Oscar for his innovative and influential body of work. Altman died in Los Angeles on November 20th, 2006, at the age of 81.
Wow. I remember when I heard that he died. I mean, we read about things. We see things online. Somebody passed away, like, David Bowie. That was a shock.
Yeah.
But I remember being really, really upset about Robert Altman because I just had been watching his movies like nonstop since I was a kid.
So what is your first blood then?
Well, my first blood was actually Popeye.
Oh, yeah.
I was 11 years old. It came out in 1980, and my parents thought, oh, we'll take him to see Popeye. He'll love it. I didn't get it. I mean, because even though it was supposed to be a big commercial film, it really wasn't. It was actually kind of a bomb, and it set Robert Altman back quite a few years, and he really sort of didn't have his comeback movie until about 12 years later with The Player. But, they thought, oh, Robin Williams in his first movie, the Shelley Duvall as Olive Oyl, what's not to like? Well, he's a great director, but not with that kind of material, so I just didn't get it. But what is your first blood?
My first blood wasn't until The Player.
Oh, right.
So I didn't discover Robert Altman until I was in my teens, and we talk about this a lot on Profiles for good reason, that, I didn't go to the cinema much when I was younger. There was no opportunity, didn't have the money. So I would go down to the video store and just trawl through all the shelves, and I would stick in the classics a lot, and then I would try these avant-garde directors. And I saw The Player, and again, it was just like, okay, this guy, I need to find more of his stuff. Funnily enough, after I saw The Player, and I really liked the satire, I liked what it was saying about Hollywood, and a great story and very meta as well. But after The Player, I went to Pret-a-Porter, Ready to Wear, which I actually didn't mind. I know I didn't do so well.
I thought it was okay. It wasn't great, but I thought it was all right.
In my teen years, I
94.
thought that was kind of cool. It was fashion. And,
Even when his movies aren't great, there's still something to them that make them great.
For sure.
And Pauline Kael, the great film critic, said
She liked
that
him a lot.
she liked him a lot. She championed him. She
He's
didn't just
great.
like his movies.
Yeah, which is so important for his success.
So important, especially this day and age, to have a film critic championing your films, which is where we come in. But Pauline Kael said that Robert Altman could make fireworks out of next to nothing.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Well, let's get into our Fast Five, shall we?
Great idea.
At number 5 is...
This isn't a hospital! It's an insane asylum, and it's your fault!
MASH, released on January 25th, 1970, cost $3 million to make. Box office domestic, $81.6 million. Instantly made Robert Altman a sought-after director. 5 Oscar nominations, including Best Picture and Robert Altman's first nomination for Best Director. 1 Oscar win for Adapted Screenplay. It won the Golden Globe for Best Picture, Musical or Comedy, and it won the top prize at the 1970 Cannes Film Festival.
And it was actually a comedy.
It was
at
a
the
comedy.
Golden Globes. It's great.
It is funny.
It is funny. It's dark as well.
Because it's a political war satire.
It's an anti-war film.
And here's a movie that came out in the middle of Vietnam, and
Yeah.
it takes place in
Yeah,
Korea.
in Korea. And the thing that is interesting about it was based on a popular book. And then at the time of filming, it was the same time that Patton was shooting and Tora. And so I think the studio was worried about the film fitting in. It also was able to go under the radar a lot. There's no pun intended. So then Altman was able to...
Good one, Leash.
was able to, get away with some of the countercultural stuff that he put in there. When Fox first saw it, they were like, oh no, this is going to be a disaster. But it ended up obviously being a classic
And
film.
because Fox was so worried about Tora and Patton, Robert Altman said that MASH wasn't released. It escaped.
I like that.
And that's a great thing because, I mean, even by today's standards, you're watching that movie, and from the very, very first scene after the opening credits, suicide is painless.
Yeah, which his son, Robert Altman's son, wrote the lyrics to when he was 14 years old.
14 years old. So
Amazing.
it runs in the family.
But you know straight away that you're not in for the usual war film.
No, you're not.
And it's got the intersecting, dialogue, the camera moves, all the different characters that you have to keep on top of. Donald Sutherland's in there and Elliott Gould. Apparently they had a pretty tough time shooting. There's rumors that Elliott and Donald kind of wanted Altman fired off the project. They didn't quite understand what was going on.
They didn't get him.
Obviously they did a lot after that.
Yeah, that's what happens when you work with a filmmaker who's ahead of his time, is everyone
Like, what are
around
we
you's going
doing?
like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And, a lot of the dialogue, a lot of the scenes were improvised,
Mm-hmm.
and they used the script, even though it won the Oscar for Best Adapted Screenplay. screenplay for Ring Lardner Jr., it was largely improvised, and yet it still won the Oscar, which I think is fantastic.
Really loose structure as well. Altman was offered the script after several other filmmakers passed on it, but this was his breakout film. And of course, a lot of people know about the TV series that came after it.
Yeah, Loving
and
Years.
People often point to the fact that MASH does have somewhat of an episodic structure to it. It's a very loose structure, but Altman had nothing to do with the actual TV show.
It's a bold movie. I mean, again, it was about Korea, but it really was about Vietnam.
Yep.
It was a subversive film. It was, the improv just sort of makes it feel so loose and natural. And, this is also the first R-rated movie to drop the F-bomb.
Yes, I was reading that. And, we're talking about Pauline Kael, another great supporter of Robert Altman is, of course, Roger Ebert. Mm-hmm. We mentioned him a lot, but he was so important for these up-and-coming directors. And he says about MASH, it is the flat-out, poker-faced hatred in MASH that makes it work. Most comedies want us to laugh at the things that aren't really funny. In this one, we laugh precisely because they're not funny. I love that.
Well, Robert Altman actually said of his films, of his long career, he said, I don't think there's ever been a filmmaker who had a better shake than I've had. I've never been without a project, and it's always been a project of my choosing. I have been able to do what I wanted to do, and I've done it again and a lot.
And on our profile is Hassam Mazir. I was trying to say it like so calmly.
So naturally, right?
Mirza says about MASH, it put Altman on the map. It also gave us one of the best sitcoms of all time through inspiration. It was also my first Altman and probably is one of my favorite comedies. It also has a sharp and brutal critique of Vietnam, but more subtle, allegorical, and funny. Very true. Well,
before we really get into the thick of this show, let's just take care of a little bit of business here.
Go for it.
So it's been a while since we've done an episode of Profiles, and I realized I really missed doing the show.
I missed it too.
What is it? It's so great to be back. It's the first episode of 2016.
I also realized I forgot to put lipstick on today.
No, you look great without the lipstick.
I'm used to it.
I forgot to put lipstick on too.
Oh, God
But
damn it.
anyway, so please make sure you support Profiles by going to iTunes and subscribe to Profiles, and make sure you rate and review us on iTunes. Make sure you go to youtube.com/Popcorn Talk Network and subscribe to that as well. And make sure you share Profiles with all of your movie fans, and make sure you have them share Profiles too. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at Alicia Malone, at Movie Mantz, at Alicia Malone, at Movie Mantz. Yes, I missed us so much. At Alicia Malone, at Movie Mantz.
My favorite thing is not so much the pause, it's how you do the like it's really strong.
It's making my point. Make sure you follow us at Alicia Malone, at Movie Mantz.
And if you like the t-shirts that we're wearing, they are available on tpublic.com/user/profiles.
Yes, we love these Profiles t-shirts.
Yes.
Moving right along, what is your favorite scene from a Robert Altman movie? Your right stuff. I have a feeling it's also my right stuff too.
Yeah, I think it's the same. It has to be the opening shot of the player.
You mean that 8-minute opening shot of the player?
Incredible. Apparently they did it 15 takes, but you can see by the clapper at the start that they used take number 10. I love the way it includes the clapper, the action. So it's kind of like you're watching a movie being made, and then it is the movie itself.
Yeah, because right when the movie starts, it sets it up perfect. Right when the movie starts, you see the clapper and you hear an action. And speaking of action, right now joining us on Profiles is Elliott Gould, who made not one, not two, but 3 great films with the great Robert Altman. And Elliott Gould, thank you so much for joining us here on Profiles. You're on with Scott and Alicia.
Hello, Alicia. Hi, Scott. Thanks for bringing me on.
Thank you so much for joining us. We're talking about what a master Robert Altman is, and watching his films is such a treat. It's great to see you in a lot of them as well. So in your opinion, what makes Robert Altman stand out from the rest of the pack?
Well, I mean, he loved life, and I find that most, not all of his films reflected life taking its course, which, of course, is the most interesting part of our nature. And so Bob did a lot of great work, and for me, he was the American director. There were others great iconic directors like John Ford, Frank Capra, great American directors, and Bob Altman certainly was one.
Well, what was your first impression of him when you were getting ready to gear up for MASH? You got the script. What do you remember about your first meeting with Robert Altman?
Well, he was alone in the office. He was wearing a hat, like one of those Australian hats with one side folded up. He gave me the script, asked me to read it, and then come back and talk with him. And he then asked me if I would consider playing Duke, the American Southerner, and I said I've never questioned an offer, and I'd love to work with you, but I'll be very intense validating me as an American Southerner. I could do it, but this character of Trapper John McIntyre, if you haven't cast it, I've got what that character needs. I've got the juice, I've got the energy, and Bob just about let me cast myself and gave me the part.
Oh, that's so great. Now, he was unlike anyone else in terms of his structure or the looseness of it. What was it like for you?
In terms of what?
Yeah, in terms of the structure, the way he structured his movies, the way he allowed you guys to improvise. As an actor, what was that like for your first experience with him?
Well, my first experience on MASH, it was Bob had everybody with him. And of course, Donald and I, Sutherland, we worked for Bob, and we were part of his ensemble, but we were sort of a bit isolated. And I remember when Bob asked me at the beginning, because Donald was cast before me, if I would have lunch with Donald at the commissary of 20th Century Fox. And so we didn't quite get it, or at least I certainly didn't get it. I was used to much more structure and didn't feel terribly secure in the way Bob was directing. I didn't understand it, but eventually it all worked out, and I was able to do a lot more work with him.
Well, when did you feel during the making of MASH, when did you sort of feel it start to come together? When did you realize that you could actually trust him as a director?
Well, trust is an interesting thing. I mean, let's see. When I saw the film, I mean, it's I believe that the MASH is Robert Altman's creation, and when he put in the loudspeakers as a spine for it, as far as in what was going on in the Army base. I recall when Ring Lardner Jr. came to the studio, he wrote the screenplay, and Donald and I were outside playing catch, and everybody was inside watching the film at Fox with Bob and Ring Lardner Jr., and Ring Lardner Jr. came out, walked up to me, and I thought, gee, why? I'm just an actor here. But he walked up to me and said, how could you do this to me? There's not a word that I've written on screen. And Ring Lardner Jr. went on to win the Academy Award that year for the best screenplay for MASH.
Yeah, I'll bet he stopped complaining after that happened.
That's so amazing. And of course, you worked, as you said, with Altman several times. So when you came back to work with him for The Long Goodbye, how was that experience the second time around?
Well, that was a great privilege for me because I had gone through a difficult time where Bob was a rebel, and I had rebelled, and so the studio gave me the script, Lee Brackett's script to The Long Goodbye, which of course is based on the great Raymond Chandler's novel, The Long Goodbye. And there was another director who we thought was going to do it, but he didn't see me in it, and the studio then gave it to Bob. And Bob called me from Ireland, where he was finishing doing Images with Susanna York. And Bob said to me, what do you think? And I said, well, I've always wanted to play this character. That's Philip Marlowe. And Bob said, you are this character, and that was the beginning of the picture.
Oh,
well, that must have been so rewarding. I mean, by that time, in the early 70s, I feel like, rewatching his movies, Robert Altman really hit his stride in those earlier films, Long Goodbye, and then California Split especially as well. Like, what are your fond memories of making those two films with him? Because, MASH was more of an ensemble, but those other two, they're more about you and obviously George Segal and California Split. Like, what fond memories do you have of his process, of watching him work, of your collaboration with him?
Oh, well, I recall on The Long Goodbye, there was a scene where my character was being examined and pushed around by the police, and I put ink on my face, which was not in the script. I improvised, and I recall when we were making the Ocean's 11 movie, that Steven Soderbergh came up to me and said, the ink on the face, was that an improvisation? And I said, what are you talking to me about? I'm doing something else now. And I said, and Steven said, The Long Goodbye. I said, The Long Goodbye. I said, well, yes, it was. Was that behavior acceptable to you? And he said, yes, but it was so unpredictable and unexpected. I said, what that reflected was Bob Altman's confidence and trust in me, whereas if I had stopped, it would have cost us about 25 minutes for us to get the ink off my face, which was never in the script. And what movies are is time management in relation to resources and business. And so Bob's confidence in me and trust in me was something that I may never have had before and might not even have now if he hadn't given me so much space in which to express myself.
Nice.
I love that. And you appeared in Nashville and The Player as well. How did you see Altman's style evolve over those years?
Well, I mean, I saw some of the work he did in the theater. We talked a good deal about doing more work together. We even had started to discuss the sequel to The Long Goodbye.
Yeah.
And when we were making The Long Goodbye, we had discussed, and not at length, Bob was living. I mean, Bob was creating and being in the moment all the time. And we talked about doing perhaps a Raymond Chandler bringing a project of Raymond Chandler's to the screen maybe every third year. Oh. But I'm very grateful that we were able to make one, which is The Long Goodbye.
Yeah.
Well, what does the word, now this word has been used a lot over the years, especially because of the style that Altman created, but the term Altman-esque, what does that description mean to you?
Well, when you say created, and I think Bob knew that it's life that we're talking about, it's nature that we're talking about, and nature does create itself, and Bob reflected it. And my take of the American, and Bob, like I said, to me was the American director. My take on the American is simply that which has evolved from everyone else, as in the infant of the rest of the world. Mm. When I said that to Alfred Hitchcock, not on the phone, he said, I accept.
Oh, wow.
When I then shared that with Jackie Nicholson, a great American artist and actor, and told him about what Hitchcock said, Jackie got really excited. He said, you see, Al, I mean, Hitchcock could follow you. We haven't been able to follow you. It's been too complicated.
Wow.
But Bob once had said to me on MASH, I'm distracted when I'm watching you work sometimes. And I said, then don't watch me. See what I'm doing in concert with everything else that's going on screen. I'm always in character. Don't kill what I'm doing until you see it in concert with everything else. And the next day he came to me and said, you're right.
Wow.
Right. So I was able to share something with Bob, but I couldn't have unless he gave me a privilege and the opportunity to fill some space.
Wow, you mentioned Hitchcock, I just get chills.
Yeah, we looked at each other and freaked out for a minute.
That's my favorite filmmaker. But just before we let you go, for people who are listening who maybe have never seen a Robert Altman film, what would you say where they should start, or what's your personal favorite Robert Altman movie?
I don't have favorites. I recall when Bob would have me come to the office and I watched Quintet, and that was really tough. That was a very tough picture. It's one, I think it may have been the second one of the pictures that Paul Newman made with Bob.
Yep.
And I sat in the office struggling and suffering through it. But then at the very end, I remember when Paul Newman is walking further north, further than where we've known life, suddenly a bird appears, and I said, "You see, Bob, I have to stick with everything that you do because you always have something for me. Yeah. Here is a bird representing life, and where there's life, there has to be hope." And that's what Bob was doing.
Well, I got to tell you, watching his movies, some of them again, I've seen them many times now. I still get something else out of them, and I know that Alicia does too.
Oh yes.
And Mr. Gould, thank you so much for calling in and sharing your memories of Robert Altman here on Profiles. And all the best to you, and Happy New Year.
And the same to you. And again, thanks for the time and space.
Thank you for the time and space. Have a great day.
Bye.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Give it up.
Yay!
Give it up. That was very cool.
That was so cool.
Oh my gosh.
I love it.
When he's like talking about a Jackie Nicholson and Alfred Hitchcock, and we go,
I was like, this is why I love doing this show.
This is what the show is all about.
Yeah.
Real movies, real film.
I know.
And for people watching and listening, if you have never seen a Robert Altman movie, or you just haven't seen a lot of them, do yourself a favor as a film fan and start watching a lot of them now. You don't know what you're missing if you have missed out on Robert Altman. These movies are fantastic.
Yeah.
Getting back to our right stuff.
Yeah, back to our right stuff. The Player.
The Player.
Which is that brilliant opening shot. We
8
started
minutes.
talking about it, the way it sets up the movie. The thing that I love about it too is the characters all talking about long
pitches?
takes.
Oh,
And the
yeah.
pitches.
The pitches are great.
And it follows different characters, and it follows cars and people walking and bicycles, and looks through a window, and it's so intricate, so well choreographed, but it really sets a scene, doesn't it, about it being a stage and it being a movie within a movie, and it blows my mind.
It sets up everything in this movie.
It's not just a trick shot. It has
There's
so
a
much
purpose
to it. Yeah.
There's a purpose to all of it, because you hear the studio, you see and hear the studio execs walking around, and they're talking about studio politics, that Larry Levy is going to replace Griffin Mill, the character played by Tim Robbins.
Yeah.
You see the errand guy drop, he gets hit by the cart, and it zeroes in on the postcard that says, "I'm going to kill you in the name of all writers." And then you see the pitches. You hear The Graduate Part 2. It's Out of Africa meets Pretty Woman.
And you think, that's how it is today.
Nothing has really changed in Hollywood, has it? It's a great movie, unscripted and improvised.
Wow.
Yeah, and it just 8 minutes long. It's one of the best long shots in movie history, next, of course, to Touch of Evil, which they reference a couple of times.
Love that. Love it so much. Well, let's keep going, shall we, for our Fast Five. At number 4 is...
About that night with Mitchell Anderson.
There's nothing to tell.
All right. Then tell me about nothingness. I'd like to hear a complete account of nothing.
Shortcuts. Shortcuts came out on October 3rd, 1993. Only one Oscar nomination, and that went to director Robert Altman. And just interesting bit of trivia, he lost that year to Steven Spielberg.
Schindler's List,
yeah. Exactly. But it did win a Special Ensemble Award at the Golden Globes, and it won Best Picture, Best Director, and Screenplay at the Independent Spirit Awards. I have to say, Shortcuts, one of the best movies I've ever seen about Los Angeles.
Oh, it is. It's so captures the mood perfectly. I love the ensemble cast. You've got Julianne Moore and Robert Downey Jr. and Jack Lemmon.
Yeah.
And Andy McDowell. I mean, so many people fill this, and so many interesting characters. It's got so many intersecting storylines, but it all works so well. I mean, it really reminds me of Magnolia.
Of course.
Magnolia reminds me of it, vice versa. But
that'd be a hell of a double feature, wouldn't it?
It would. It really would. I mean, it's 3 hours of thoughtful storyline, and also quite sad at the same time. Very melancholic mood throughout.
The interesting thing about Shortcuts that struck me then and it struck me now watching it again is not everything works out for the best.
No.
And there are things that happen, there are consequences to the actions of these people in the movie that they might not even know about the consequences of their actions. And I don't want to say what they are without spoiling the movie, because if you haven't seen the film, I'm telling you, this is a great movie to watch. Definitely a great starting point if you want to get everything.
That's true, yeah.
Right? This actually would be a good starting point for Robert Altman.
22 characters.
22 characters over it's disconnected, lonely.
Yeah.
I think it's a poignant and profound film. It's shocking, and of course the last scene of the movie, something happens that happens in a lot of places in the world, but no more than L.A.
Oh, no more than L.A. And I like that it's based on short stories and a poem all about Raymond Carver. Which by Raymond Carver, which you would recognize that name if you've seen Birdman, because remember Riggins is doing a play.
Oh, that's right.
Raymond Carver
That's
play.
Raymond Carver.
Written by Raymond Carver. And Altman had discovered this book and then he read it on a plane. And he said, I got off the plane and I remember walking down the ramp and thinking, there's a movie here. I think what I did is I made Carver soup out of these stories.
Carver soup.
And that's a great way of saying it. So just like mixing it all together and making something magical.
You know, when he does his ensemble films, which he did more of them as his career went on. And I just feel like I got the impression that he would sort of revel in sort of creating chaos.
Yeah.
And encouraging his actors. He really worked with his actors. He was never separate from his actors. He saw his actors as the most important element of the film, more than the director, more than the producer, even more than the writer, because they're the ones that you are watching. So he encouraged them.
It's funny that he skewed that with the player.
Exactly.
With the executives thinking that they're more important than the writers.
And was Tim Robbins says, I was just thinking what a great thing it would be to remove the writer from the artistic process. But the New York Times was a big fan of this movie, saying that the lives are often desperate and the characters inarticulate, but the group portrait is as grandly and hilariously realized as anything the director has ever done. That was Vincent Canby in the New York Times.
And I have to do another Ebert quote just because he summed up exactly what you were saying about the mood of LA and the way it's captured, and he says it in a way that I could just never articulate. He said, Los Angeles always seems to be waiting for something. Permanence seems out of reach. Some great apocalyptic event is on the horizon, and people know the future is tentative.
Wow.
Shortcuts captures that uneasiness perfectly.
That is the greatest thing I ever
How
heard.
I feel about LA all the time.
That is not just the movie.
Yeah.
That is LA.
It is LA.
Roger Ebert. Of course, it's Roger Ebert.
He's amazing.
Well, Zach Mitchell, not Roger Ebert, but he is one of our favorite profilers.
And he's got a good comment.
He's got a good comment here.
And he's watching live.
And he's watching live. What's up, Zach? It's not one of the easiest to watch, but Shortcuts is a powerful, incredible movie. It's the most impressive ensemble cast Altman ever assembled, not including the cameos in The Player. That's true. Shortcuts depicts how random life can be by showing us characters who will never learn about the horrible outcomes of their actions. And while their characters will never learn who caused those outcomes. Here, characters need not even directly intersect in order to have the most profound effects on each other. I would compare this first with Nashville, particularly the finale. Shortcuts is the summation of Altman's filmography.
And Rachel Cushing, who's watching, says it's an honest movie, which is refreshing, though still sad. And Bill Pollin says that we need to do a Jack Lemmon profile at some point.
I was thinking about that when you mentioned that.
Yes.
About Jack Lemmon.
Yeah, I love Jack Lemmon.
And we also need to do Paul Newman.
Yeah, oh my gosh.
See, this is what I mean. We need your support so we can keep this going.
Well,
we want profiles to keep getting bigger and bigger and better.
Yeah.
And well, we'll get to that.
Miyazaki. I mean, there's so many we could do.
So many. You know,
Lots
people
more
have
women.
requested Miyazaki.
Yeah.
You know, we're going to get to Jodie Foster really soon because she's got a new movie coming out.
So many.
That's going to be good. So many possibilities. Okay.
Last detail.
Last detail. Trivia about Robert Altman. Give me some.
Oh, you said that one. I was going to be like, did you know the first F word was in there? You said that. And yes, Mike Altman wrote the lyrics to Suicide is Pains. The one that I have, though, it's an interview quote of Robert Altman, and it's just something that I love. I read it, and I was like, I'm writing this down. So it's not so much trivia, just a little bit of Altman.
Okay.
He said, wisdom and love have nothing to do with each other. Wisdom is staying alive, survival. You're wise if you don't stick your finger in the light plug. Love, you'll stick your finger in anything.
Wow, that's a good quote.
I love it.
I mean, that's why he makes the movies he does.
my favorite.
Now, so at the 2006 Academy Awards, I was working in the press room, which is where the winners would come back and talk to the press after they won their Oscar. So that year, that was the year that Robert Altman was honored with his honorary Oscar for his influential body of work. And that was right after he announced on stage that 10 or 11 years prior to that night, he had a heart transplant.
Oh, wow.
And, a lot of us in the press room didn't hear his speech because we were watching the person prior talking about their award.
Yeah.
And everybody just sort of like, wait, what? Did we know this?
Yeah.
And that was just a very interesting thing for him to reveal at the Oscars just a few months before he passed away.
Wow, what was it like seeing him in the flesh?
In the flesh, I'm telling you, Leash, just again, all the people that we've interviewed over the years, but there are certain people where you just go, they're the reason, they're the one.
That's
and Robert
why
Altman
we're
was
here.
one of them. And I just went, wow, I mean, ever since I was a little kid, I've seen his movies.
Yeah.
Didn't love them all, but the ones I loved, I really loved, and here he is right there. I'm sorry I never got a chance to interview him, but
You got to see him, that's great.
got to see him. 14 other directors passed on MASH, which you mentioned. Among them were George Roy Hill, who did Butch and Sundance,
Yeah.
and director Sidney Pollack passed too.
Oh, wow.
But you know what? It landed in the right hands. And one more tidbit for you. 6 actresses were directed to Oscar-nominated roles by Robert Altman. Sally Kellerman, Lily Tomlin, Julie Christie, Ronnie Blakely, Helen Mirren, and Maggie Smith.
That's great. He gave them great roles. He gave women great roles because he often just reflects life, and he had really complicated men and women, which is how it should be.
That's how it should be.
Let's
yes.
keep going for Fast Five. Number
Number
3.
I'm talking about a proper sporting house with class girls and clean linen and proper hygiene.
Well, I don't think you're going to find my clientele up here too interested in that sort of thing.
Wow,
Mrs.
McCabe and
McCabe,
Mrs. Miller.
McCabe and Mrs. Miller.
19
Speaking of complicated women.
Complicated Women. And this movie, an incredible film, a movie that has gotten better and more appreciated over the years. Released on June 24th, 1971. One Oscar nomination, just like I said, Best Actress for Julie Christie. And this is a film that the first time you see it, you gotta be patient with it. Allow yourself to get into it, because this is what Robert Altman himself called an anti-Western, because it shuns the conventions and cliches of the typical Western. It doesn't glorify the Old West.
Yeah, it's
it makes it look.
hero.
What movie did this remind you of when you were rewatching it?
I don't know. What were we going to say?
In a very small way, especially just because it was set in a small town, it reminded me a little of The Revenant.
Oh, really?
Just because The Revenant is a Western.
Yeah.
But it is
it's
so
not.
different that it doesn't feel like a Western.
That's
if someone
true.
told me that McCabe and Mrs. Miller was a Western while I was watching it, I'd be like, no way.
Yeah.
I mean, it's 1902 in Washington State, but it is a Western.
Yeah.
And with an incredible
That's
scene
interesting.
at the end, the shootout scene where
Don't give anything away.
don't want to give anything away, but there's no music. It's very intense. The ending was very controversial then. It's been a few weeks, folks. It's controversial now, and I think it is a very, very suspenseful, but still in its own unique way, a true Robert Altman movie.
It is, yeah. And they sometimes call these kind of westerns revisionist westerns.
Yep.
With the darker tone, the focus on realism. It was based on a 1959 novel called McCabe. And yeah, like, it's interesting that he said it was an anti-Western. You definitely see that. The character played by Warren Beatty, he's no hero.
Nope.
He's looking out for himself. Same with the character played by Julie
Christie. Yep.
Apparently, Warren Beatty and Robert Altman clashed a lot on set.
Shocker.
Because Altman wanted to throw out the script and just improvise it all, and that's not the way that Warren Beatty worked. He wanted to use long lenses instead of close-ups. And afterwards, Beatty was upset at the overlapping dialogue because some of it you can't quite hear what they're saying. It's a bit muffled. It's hard to make out. But Altman didn't do dubbing afterwards.
You know, when
He
you're
refused.
watching his movies for the first time, you're like, who do I listen to? Who do I listen
And
to?
which character is important? Which one do I need to follow?
Watch
What are
it
their
again.
names? Yeah, watch it again.
Choose your character.
Choose your own adventure.
Choose your dialogue. And, Altman was very innovative with his use of sound because he created these track machines so that even though you have a bunch of actors in a scene and they're all talking over each other, each microphone was able to pick up the person just that it was focusing on. And of course it's used all the time now, but it's not just his visuals, it's the use of sound that also made him so innovative.
Which makes you feel like you're listening in on life, on a conversation.
Natural. He always went for the natural, genuine feel of being in the room with a bunch of people. And referring to McCabe and Mrs. Miller, Roger Ebert said, Altman has made a dozen films that can be called great in one way or another, but one of them is perfect, and that film is McCabe and Mrs. Miller.
I also love what Altman said about Warren Beatty afterwards. He was like, Warren was infuriated. He's still infuriated. He'll just have to stay infuriated. What ended up being such a masterpiece. And Federico Martins said on our Profilers Facebook page, although Altman is better known for ensemble pieces, McCabe and Mrs. Miller is arguably his masterwork. Altman trades the epic shots of Once Upon a Time in the West or The Searchers for an intimate and bleak anti-Western with beautiful cinematography and a beautiful score. It's a perfect movie that not only ranks amongst the best westerns of all time, but also among the best films of all time, period.
Well, Liam Logrand from your homeland of Australia said McCabe and Mrs. Miller is the definitive anti-Western of the 70s. Robert Altman avoids a substantial amount of cliches apparent in the Western genre and generates a mature atmosphere that was beginning to emerge in other films such as The Wild Bunch, Straw Dogs, and A Clockwork Orange. By the way, this kid's 17 years old.
Oh, he's watching now.
Very impressed with this guy.
So impressive.
So impressive. From the prostitutes to the disgusting environments, the Wild West was realistically captured on film and wasn't sugar-coated in any way. The reason why Robert Altman is my favorite director of all time is because he's capable of getting diverse and creative performances out of any actor and actress. Hashtag film geek. Hashtag profile for life.
Love that. Okay, there's so many films, obviously, that Robert Altman did. We can't fit them all into our Fast Five, so hit me up with some others.
By
what
the way,
are the others that you love?
We can't even fit them all in our others.
No, I had to pare them right down.
I was like, boy, I mean, this could be like a 3-hour show if we go down the list. But of course, we talked to Elliott Gould about The Long Goodbye, 1973. Detective Philip Marlowe. The music in this movie by John Williams. This is a film noir classic in every sense of the word.
It is, but set in modern 70s.
Yes, it is. And I knew rewatching the film, I'm like, oh, I bet Alicia loves this movie.
Oh, yeah. I love it. It's a gumshoe.
Yep, totally.
Crime. Yep, I love it. Love that. I also really like Gosford Park, 2001, the British sort of murder mystery. It's got his classic camera work and conversational dialogue mixed with English drama. Also has some really interesting things to say about the class system.
It was the Downton Abbey of its day.
Yeah, I think it inspired Downton Abbey.
It definitely did, yeah. 7 Oscar nominations, including picture and director, and 1 original screenplay for Julian Fellows. Another movie that I like a lot. I'm not sure if it's regarded as one of his best, but I certainly love it and just love it more now that I've watched it again. It's Three Women. It came out in 1977. Shelley Duvall, Sissy Spacek, and Janice Rule. It's a very bizarre film. It starts off as one film. Basically, I mean, it's called Three Women. It really centers on these 2 roommates played by Sissy Spacek and Shelley Duvall. And then there's this like role reversal that happens towards the end of the film. It's a surreal film. And Altman, so I want to say he wrote the screenplay, even though he just sort of wrote more or less an outline for it because he improvised. He encouraged improvisation, but he sort of based it on his dreams, which gives it that surreal feel.
Yeah, it definitely does. I also like The Company, which was 2003. I know it's not people's favorites, but I think it's a great indie film about a ballet. And he's so great at looking at these little microcosms, whether it's country music or whether it's LA or whether it's ballet or whether it's England, like English sort of drawing room. Then he's so great at picking apart the systems that go on within this microcosm. And that's why I liked The Company. And it had Neve Campbell and James Franco. A bit all over the place, but I still stuck with it.
Again, not one of his best, but I still
like it a lot. Not one of the best reviewed at all.
But another film, not a film, but it is a TV miniseries, Tanner 88.
Never seen it.
It was an HBO miniseries in the late 80s, 1988, during an election year. It's a mockumentary about Jack Tanner, played by Michael Murphy, running for president. And it was written by Gary Trudeau. And this was 1988, before cable really was what it is now with like Showtime and all these great shows. Yeah, especially Netflix, where like, you download a season of House of Cards.
Making a Murderer.
Tanner 88, he cut his chops in TV, but this was a return to TV, but it was still felt very Altman-esque. And just one final film that I wanted to mention was his final movie, A Prairie Home Companion.
Yeah.
A lovely film, really charming and delightful. Came out in 2006. Paul Thomas Anderson.
Standby director. Because he was ill, and if something should happen, PTA would have gone on to finish the movie. And of course, after making Magnolia, if anybody is qualified to do an Altman film, it's Paul Thomas Anderson. To handle multiple characters.
But he went out on a very, very high note. I mean, it was a lovely, lovely film.
It was
Great
really
cast.
lovely. Great cast. Meryl Streep.
And our brackets.
Brackets, yes. Almost forgot about our brackets. Thank you to the profilers. What we do every week on our Facebook page is that our profilers do these little competitions where you can vote. So this time they voted on the best films directed by Robert Altman. It came down to The Player versus MASH, and then Gosford Park versus Nashville. So those each worked themselves out to be The Player versus Nashville as the grand final. Who do you think won The Player versus Nashville for our profilers as the best Robert Altman film?
The best Robert Altman film. Well, I'm going to say just because I'm going to go with The Player.
The Player!
The Player did win.
Yep, The Player won. Our profilers like that as their favorite movie from Robert Altman.
Well, it's also one of ours, which brings us to number 2 on our Fast Five.
Yes, which is...
Movie exec calls writer. Writer's girlfriend says he's at the movies. Exec goes to the movies, meets writer, drinks with writer. Writer gets conked and dies in 4 inches of dirty water.
Less than 25 seconds. Less than 25 seconds. The Player,
released on April 10th, 1992, cost $8 million to make, box office about $22 million, 3 Oscar nominations, including Best Director, Adapted Screenplay, and Editing. And 12 years after Popeye, which was kind of a bomb, and a bunch of his other films didn't really hit their mark, this was without question Altman's comeback movie. What a comeback it was.
I love that it's his comeback because at the same time he's completely skewering Hollywood.
Absolutely.
And it was his comeback into the Hollywood system.
This is a razor-sharp Hollywood satire.
I love this movie.
The dialogue is
my
great.
favorite.
It says just as much about Hollywood today as it did in 1992.
Oh, yeah.
And the thing about this movie is, I saw it. I moved out to L.A. in 91. So 5 months later, I see The Player.
Welcome to Hollywood.
Welcome to Hollywood. So I saw the movie at the theater on Avenue of the Stars. It was a theater that doesn't even exist anymore. CAA is headquartered there now. But I just moved here, and Century City is an industry town. So I go on this Friday night to see the movie with a bunch of friends, and it was sold out. Everybody's laughing. Everybody is laughing at this movie. And I'm looking around going like,
what?
Where the hell am I? It was Hollywood. Yeah. Hollywood was laughing at itself because the movie was so right on. It's so funny and so smart and so inside, proving that, yes, making movies can be murder.
I love that people laugh at it because it is making fun of Hollywood. It's kind of like the anti-Entourage, because Entourage is a celebration of Hollywood and the glamour. This just takes it down.
Yeah.
And like we were saying before, it's like a movie within a movie within a movie. It's like the life of Griffin Dunn, played by Tim Robbins, becomes a movie within itself. I was also rewatching it just this week, and now that I'm in LA, I think I find it funnier and scarier than before I saw it when I was in LA. It also made me think about how, while Hollywood is still the same in terms of like, let's make this movie mixed with this movie or the sequel of this, also made me think that these days screenwriters don't really even get in the room to pitch anything original. It's by marketing. They decide first, and then they hire screenwriters to come on board.
Well, I mean, this is the days before the internet, 1992, but the movie is not that dated because during their pitch meetings in the beginning of the film, during that 8-minute scene, everybody wants Julia Roberts and Bruce Willis in their film.
Yes.
And in 2016, people still want Julia Roberts and Bruce Willis in their movies.
And I love how there's a cameo by Bruce Willis and Julia Roberts in The Player.
What took you so long?
Yeah, I love
Traffic was a bitch.
Traffic was a bitch.
Great
It's
movie.
So true. Altman said, it's not a truthful indictment of Hollywood because Hollywood is much uglier than I portrayed it. But nobody would have been interested if I'd shown how sadistic, cruel, and self-orientated it is.
So he went easy.
I agree. Yeah.
He went easy. That's very true. Entertainment Weekly gave it an A+, saying The Player is deliciously, quintessentially Altman. It was his deadpan mastery, his sidelong way at spotlighting jokes within the jovial mindlessness of everyday banter. And Roger Ebert said, it's a movie about today's Hollywood, hilarious and heartless in equal measure and often at the same time.
Yeah, I would say if people haven't seen any Robert Altman movies, I would say
place.
Shortcuts or The Player, because
Right.
The Player is really
Accessible.
interesting and accessible. Billy Polahan, who is watching right now live, says about The Player, few films capture Hollywood with such grit and darkness. The Player is a film that until Profiles I had never even heard of.
Well, there you go.
But I watched it and I fell in love with it. Oh, that makes me so happy.
Yay.
The cameos of celebrities being exaggerated versions of themselves make the film feel even more authentic and believable. Tim Robbins is terrific as Griffin Mill, and his building paranoia teeters on the verge of madness. It is an amazing film and one that I'll watch many more times. Hashtag film geek,
Hashtag Profile for Life. Now, we haven't done this segment in quite some time. Adaptation.
Yes.
Which is where we look at the filmmaker we're talking about and say, hey, maybe if you like these movies, check out other films that were inspired by this. Well, because Altman was so influential, we just had to bring back adaptation and talk about some films that would not exist had it not been for films like Nashville and Shortcuts.
Well, obviously,
of course,
Magnolia.
Magnolia being one of them, Paul Thomas Anderson from 1999. That movie really, not only would it be a great companion piece to Shortcuts, it would be a great sequel of sorts to Shortcuts. Also, the year before, and this was a movie that Magnolia reminded me of when I saw Magnolia, Happiness, directed by Todd Solondz.
Who has a movie at Sundance.
Yes, Wiener Dog.
gosh, I can't wait to see
Yeah,
it.
can't wait to see Sundance. Okay, we're digressing here. Also, a movie that, love it or hate it, it did win Best Picture. Director Paul Haggis for Crash.
Yes, also Traffic.
Traffic.
Soderbergh
Yep.
has
Oh, yeah.
a lot of those intersecting storylines. I mean, you could even go with things like we were talking about Love Actually.
Love Actually, yeah.
You can even talk about Cloud Atlas. You know, as another one with multiple storylines based on a book, but it was done like that in the film. You could also talk about Pulp Fiction with all the different
Interesting.
characters.
Good one.
Intersecting.
Good one.
And I would also say Birdman in terms of the camera shots.
Oh, that's
And the
great.
Raven cover.
Yeah. Well, also, I mean, that is sort of an
Because
ensemble in itself.
even though Altman, you know, he did The Player, which was a great long take, and he didn't do that many long takes, the way he moved his camera felt a lot like Birdman to me.
And a lot of his
Vice
films,
versa.
yeah, especially if you go back and watch The Long Goodbye, the camera is always moving.
Always moving. It's like almost documentary style because it's
It's-
always moving with the people.
And also
Energy.
like, makes it a little bit more suspenseful.
Yeah.
Speaking of suspense, our number one movie, what could it be? It is...
Life may be a
Is anybody down here can help us?
but it don't worry me. Come on, everybody sing. It don't worry me. It don't worry me.
Aww.
It don't worry me. Barbara Harris singing in the finale of Nashville,
Nashville.
our number
What a
one
haunting
Robert Altman.
ending.
What a haunting ending. What a great movie, released June 6, 1975. Cost $2.2 million to make. Box office was around $7 million. 5 Oscar nominations, including Best Picture, Best Director, and 2 for Supporting Actress for Lily Tomlin and Ronnie Blakely. 1 Oscar win for song Keith Carradine, I'm Easy.
And there's an hour of music in this film.
Music's
There's a lot of music, but it talks about the characters and their feelings and what they're going through.
And it also, you could say, oh, the music was great, but sometimes it was.
Sometimes it
wasn't. Like, for example, Let Me Be the One.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Sulene Gay.
Celine.
She's a dreamer.
I know, and then what happens to her? I mean, the whole movie is such an interesting look at celebrity it is also an interesting look, obviously, at country, Western music, but also about politics, like post-Watergate politics.
Yeah,
it says a lot about the time.
It's an intersection of music and politics, and also the politics of music.
Yeah.
And, you know, you have, like the way Elliott Gould was talking before about the loudspeaker at the MASH base, you know, attention all personnel, it was sort of like this backbone to the movie, and the backbone to this film is that van driving around saying, you know, vote for my candidate because here's why, and he's throughout the entire movie it keeps cutting back to that, like it's a, I don't say it's a running joke, but it does sort of like thread the movie together. And watching this movie again, it really gets swept up in it. It's a really engrossing film, and it has a really epic feel to it, doesn't it?
It is epic, and it has 24 main characters who are all linked in one way or another.
Over 5 days.
Over 5 days. Some of the characters only have about 20 minutes of screen time, but still you feel attached to them, you care about them, you want to see what happens next, and that ending, not giving anything away, but it just leaves you breathless. It hits you.
Yep.
Because it has some very funny moments up till then, some serious moment, funny, and then just like it's a sucker punch.
It's definitely, and it just like when the movie's over, you're just like, whoa.
And
like,
Elliott Gould is himself, which is
and
great.
Elliott Gould is himself in the movie, right? That's so great. Colleen Kael really championing this film as well.
Yay.
The funniest epic vision of America to ever reach the big screen.
I've got another Pauline Kael quote for you. She said about Nashville, "It's pure emotional high, and you don't come down when the picture is over."
You don't.
You don't.
Absolutely you don't. And Roger Ebert, finishing it off from our critics here, after I saw it, I felt more alive. I felt I understood more about people. I felt wiser. It's that good of a movie.
Wow.
And just finishing it off from our profilers, of course, we're going to give it to Rachel Cushing,
Yay.
who's just a fantastic critic and a great writer. Nashville is a truly unique film with an absolutely sprawling cast, impactful music, and sometimes elusive themes. It's one of the seminal films that changed how and why movies can be made. The film takes place over 5 days and tells a number of interconnected stories leading up to a political rally for an unseen candidate. Though it is often biting and satirical, there's also a beautiful undercurrent of sadness and earnestness to the stories, particularly that of Lily Tomlin's character, Linnea. And then there are the songs. The more times you see this movie and listen to the lyrics of the many musical numbers, the more you come to realize how deep and thoughtful a director Altman truly is. And speaking of that music, the performers, the actors, were encouraged to write their own songs and perform them live.
Incredible. And it's also the film that gave Jeff Goldblum a start.
That's right. The little magician.
Yeah,
you
little
know,
motorbike
the little
scene.
boat with those glasses.
So good.
Well, just before we go, we're just going to take care of business one last time. Again, please make sure you go to iTunes. Remember iTunes? And subscribe to our podcast there. And please, even if you're watching the show now, please make sure you go to iTunes and rate and review us on iTunes so we can kind of get back on the board. It's been a while. But also make sure you go to youtube.com/Popcorn Talk Network. Subscribe to us there.
Correct.
And make sure you follow us.
Oh, here we go. I was waiting
on
for you
Twitter,
to do it. Yeah.
At Alicia Malone, at Movie Mantz, at Alicia Malone, at Movie Mantz. It's all about the pause. At Alicia Malone, at Movie Mantz.
Yay! Now let's just quickly recap our Fast Five. Number 5 was
MASH.
Number 4.
Shortcuts.
Number 3.
The Player.
No,
number
McCabe
3
and
was
Mrs.
McCabe and Mrs. Miller.
Number 2.
The Player.
Number 1.
Nashville.
I close my book.
I closed my book too.
And we will see you guys very soon.
The next time on Profiles. Bye.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, Christian Harloff, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network, we would like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of its owners or principals.